There have been fewer times in my life when I felt this low, and this is certainly the worst of all, and I could not possibly see myself without my loving wife and my two little kids. Well, who would spend their days and nights with me? I really miss them a lot, and they have all such innocent and petty habits. I recall spending my entire days with them, playing with dirt and lying in the sun, buying stuff, much, much more. All this because of my mother-in-law, who came to our house just a few days before and fell prey to her deceiving access, displaying me as a really bad father, who behaved atrociously with his own little kids. And she made this quite evident in front of my loving wife, showing that she had no other resolve but to adhere to her. So I was made to leave the house, forsaking my wife and two small kids. My mother-in-law pretty much triumphant all her cunning and undignified exploits. It's brought me utter discomfort to deal with the fact that I can no longer get back to my, winning little kids. Moreover, it would be really demanding for them to not get a hold of my sight for too long. Let's start this trail here. I met my wife, Dia, a couple years ago outside a restaurant while she was having fun with her colleagues. I was so blown away by her surreal charm and glamour that I knew in the very next breath that she was the one with whom I would like to spend the rest of my life with, without a doubt. She has really friendly, all-around captivating attitude that pretty much leaves everyone around her spellbound to hear her varying gentle appeals. I guess this is the reason that she secured this recruitment manager job in her career, where she's always on the move, recruiting skilled and competent individuals for the desired role in various big firms all over the world. And I bet that her interactive and appeasing demeanor comes in handy while informing the concerned one about the workplace and helping him get over there really well. Sometimes she's out for days and even weeks visiting some distant nation to help renowned firms hire working professionals in an affluent manner. It wasn't that she had this job from the beginning of our relationship. Rather, it was quite before our marriage that she landed this irksome job all of a sudden. I really had no ill feelings over it, as I've always been supportive of her professional career from the get-go. Moreover, my steady job as a web designer allowed me to cover her in her dire hour of need, as I don't really have to visit the workplace quite often. We had a few hardships in the initial days of our relationship, as she would be away for days and weeks while I was left alone at home, thinking of her all the time. Though I got used to it as we went further in the relationship, it was not much later that we married and I moved in with her. My parents lived in the same city. It's quite far, yet I could visit them anytime I wanted. We had a great time together in the past few years, and we were thrilled to have two really cute twins after some years of marriage. Both of them are boys who are really fun and excited to play with. They pretty much spend most of their time playing with me, as Dia is away most of the time. We would go on vacations and have dinner together while she was on leave. She had taken a break in her career for over a year because of the pregnancy that struck her home, restricting her frequent movements and flights, and it was totally her own decision to have children, as she thought that a child would allow me to be reminded of her all the time. And having two twins just added more enthusiasm to it. Though she was reluctant to join her job after the birth, fearing that it might trouble me to take care of the kids alone, I knew deep inside that she wanted to join her job, and it was quite apparent in her behavior as she seemed dull and thoughtless all the time. The very first thing that bound her to his job was her love for traveling and exploring new places. And her job gave her the perfect exposure, a chance just to live up to her fantasy. I was delighted to see that spark in her attitude once again, and it gave me so much more pleasure to see her like that. I really love being around my kids and taking care of their usual well-being all day. It wasn't very stressful for me as I got used to it over time. Rather, I would feel deprived and wanting for them if somehow I had to leave them all of a sudden. They too could not bear it for long if I wasn't there for a while. Things were going really well in our family, Until Dia's mother, Sylvia. Well, she arrived, and her reason for getting back to Dia was the death of her husband, who died of liver cancer in his 60s. They used to live in some faraway village area, I don't really know. She was left alone by the death of my father-in-law, as they had no other child within Dia. I remember being told about my in-laws by Dia before our marriage. She said that they were really restrictive in their thoughts and did not know much about the, outside world. I was quite surprised to hear her, as I could not imagine that somebody could have such thoughts in today's time. I hadn't really seen them before, and it was the first time that I was going to get sight of her. When we received her at the station, I shared some words with her after Dia introduced me to her. There I found her also exciting and appealing, and I didn't really think back then in my first encounter with her that she would be in the coming days make me sidelined with my own family. After we brought her home, she joined in with our 2 kids, and they seemed to be getting along with her quite well. I was quite relieved to have her there, as she reduced my efforts in handling my kids to a certain extent. It was not good of me to think as such without knowing that I would regret it in the future. She did not know much about Dia's job, and she didn't even care much about explaining it to her mother. Well, I bet she was quite sure that her mom would just not understand it anyways. Things were pretty good between us in the initial days, but her reaction towards me aggravated with time. I guess this could be because she thought that I did not have a proper job and that I pretty much dwelled on her daughter's money, which was totally absurd. Yet I did not have any plan to seize her from believing this. Fearing that she might not get it so easily, I wish that I would have made it clear to her from the beginning about my financial stability. This would have caused her to entertain some foreign and indistinct realizations about me. But the damage was already done, and I could not do anything about it. This was not really the one thing that stood between us, but we also shared other discomforts and misunderstandings that went a long way in deciding our surreal relationship. My mother-in-law had some age-old ways and techniques for handling the children in their initial years. To her, it seemed also ridiculous and pointless to offer the packaged food to the children, and she often argued with me that I was terribly wrong in doing so, and that I should cook the food on my own. I cooked food to some extent. As I pretty much like cooking, it gives me a good feeling to cook some of the dishes. It wasn't really possible for me to cook, all of it, including the sauces and other stuff. So, she would refrain from the engaging fights, friendly ones just like our own little version of WWE, fearing that it might break their legs or make them misaligned mentally. This was the most useless thing, as I cared really well for my kids, and I would not possibly perform any such act that would harm them altogether. Our arguments quickly escalated to a point where I told her straight away I was a real father, and that I would not do anything that could possibly harm them. It wasn't received quite well with her, as she sighed in despair and went along with it. I was quite confused by her reaction, to be honest, and I got involved with my kids. That was inarguably the breaking point in our relationship, as she had framed it in her mind from then on that she was going to rule me out as her family equation. To her, it was more like the best thing to do, as I was the one living on her daughter's money and even troubling her grandchildren. All according to her, of course. None of it was really true, though. It was all entertained by her in her very mind. In the days to come, I sensed a quick change in her behavior. She would be really nice to the kids and try to win them over with her care and love, and it wasn't that she didn't love the kids, yet her efforts at controlling them were very limited. The kids were not much pleased by her presence, as they rather wanted me around them all the time. So, she tried shifting their response towards her so that they could be with her even more. It was as if she had decided to pull this thing on me, and I wasn't really able to sense it in the beginning, as I thought that maybe she had all kinds of ill feelings for me. It caused me to pay more attention to my work, as she pretty much looked after them while I was busy with my stuff. It wasn't that we cannot afford a caretaker. It was just that I love taking care of the kids. Dia tried a number of times to force me to have a caretaker who would help me with the kids, but I just sent her away by saying that I did not want anyone else near my kids. I've made a good arrangement with my work routine that allows me to check on them while working as well. Moreover, I would give some extra time to my projects once they slept in the evening. This was pretty much how it went before, though now I find it difficult managing my work as the workload increases significantly. I began getting more and more projects as our company was expanding in business to other clients. So it required me to devote much more time and concentration to the work that I was doing. I found it really hard to look after my kids more often, so I began devoting my attention to my work more often, and there were days when I would only get up from my seat to have lunch or even a refreshment. In between, I would check on them as well. I would have to say that my mother-in-law was having them so well that they were really enjoying themselves, to be honest. So I would just be with them for a while and then get back to my work as usual. Thereafter, my workload increased even further, and I was required to compile the given projects before the due date, which made me work for even longer hours. After that, I started having some temperament issues, and I would easily get frustrated over my workload. I guess I would have gone through a workload management session or so, and my mother-in-law pretty much sensed this behavior and had thought of using it against me, and this became the reason for my alienation from my wife and children. After a few days, as I was working on the projects, it required me to engage with the clients, who were more demanding and wanted a distinct look for the web platform, right? I had to change the settings of a number of times, but it still was not getting it at all. So I was really annoyed by him already and was so frustrated that I was on the brink of collapse. This was the time when my cunning mother-in-law went along with my kids to my room, where I was working, and she made it all look as if my kids had brought her there, which was bull crap, as my kids never really came to my room so voluptuously. They would rather come in silence and sit before me, waiting for me to respond. This time, I wasn't getting it at all. As I was involved somewhere, then I get a call from the client, and I got busy explaining to him the corrections and the other sorts of details. Right then, my mother-in-law forced my kids to ask me for some petty things, and they came to me shouting and hollering about the particular item. I recall now that it was a chocolate chip ice cream, which we used to share during the day breaks. I was getting disturbed by their sudden behavior and was not able to get to the client properly, so I just tried to move them away, but they were adamant about it. I could not get over the whole issue, so I burst out with a bit of anger, and I recall that I pushed them aside and thrashed the door so hard that they were left with abject fear for me. Well, I finished my work, and the correction that I was meant to perform went straight to my kids. I was feeling terrible about my reaction, and I wanted to embrace it so well. So when I went out, I found them enjoying the ice cream, and they were not letting me get a hold of it in any way. They were angry over my response before, and we were in no position to give it away so early. I knew how to make them whole again, though. My mother-in-law, though, assured me that she would take care of them, and I should just head back to work. Fine. I was in a hurry to submit the changes to the client anyways. So I went ahead thinking of getting along with my kids afterwards. I never really got to embrace them again. In the evening, I found Dia back in the house, and it turns out her work was canceled. She sounded all too aggressive and volatile towards me. I thought it might be because of her work pressure. She showed me the clip that her mother had sent her that day where I was shouting and pushing my kids outside the room, and then closing it all too loudly. She said that her mom had been complaining about my behavior with the children for a few days, and that she really never paid much interest in her. However, she was left astonished after watching the clip. I wasn't getting where my mother-in-law got a hold of the clip. My wife held me responsible for behaving so abrasively with the children, and she got so intense that it was hard to control. Well, she demanded that I leave the kids alone and go to my parents' house. I tried to explain to her, but she was not going to listen to me in any sort of way. Tired of it, I left her house, and now I have no idea what to do. I'm clearly all alone, so I rest on you people here on this channel to help me with this situation, and just give me the correct choice that I should make to relieve my situation further. Update number 1. It's been about a week since the whole incident where mother-in-law framed me in an abrupt situation where she made my kids want attention. And so they came shouting at me while I was on an important call working with clients. I wasn't able to withstand the frustration due to the workload, so I shouted at my children and told them to get out of the room. One thing that I recall being so bad about was shutting the door all at once. I had bitter feelings thereafter about my actions. My mother-in-law, she captured the whole thing on camera that she had placed in my room before, and she forwarded the whole thing to my wife, disclosing to her that I've been quite abrasive to the kids. It was later that day my wife disclosed the whole thing to me that I came to know about it at all. She told me that her mother has been informing her for quite a while now, and she has been telling her that I am being too violent, too rude, while I've been under some pressure for work that I've been doing for quite some time. She gets angry with me, refused to talk to me thereafter, and I even tried to assuage her and disclose the full details, but she refused to listen at all and just demanded that I get back to my parents' house, leaving her and my kids alone. I knew that she behaved so badly with me because of her temper, and she would not have been so crazy if she was not misled into this by my mother-in-law. She's been telling my wife about me for so long, and I don't really know why, but she did all that to rule me out of Dia's life. I feel really terrible about my seeming mistake. Though I was proven wrong by my mother-in-law, I'm ashamed of my mistake of being so abrasive with my 2 kids. Every time I felt bad for repeating all the surreal mistakes, and I really wish that if I had not done so, then what would my life have been like? The other day, as I was moving along with the lane near Dia's house, I came across 2 kids who resembled a lot of my own kids. For once, I thought that they were mine and moved towards them, and later, as I reached them, I got to know that they were someone else. I could not bear how much I was missing them, and I've tried a number of times to reach Dia. However, she did not respond to any of my calls, so I stopped reaching her altogether because I did not want to disturb her. As I moved along the road, I was getting to the store where I normally visit, trying to buy the stuff that we wanted. There I got a hold of my mother and my kids who were accompanying her there. I remained there for a while, watching both of them as she went inside. She left both of my kids there and went inside the store, and I was not able to withstand my kids being left alone there. So, I wanted to know how she really behaves with my kids, and she blamed me for being so rude to my children. While I was there, I saw how innocent they looked, and they looked all scared of the people moving there. I had not expected that my mother-in-law would be behaving so badly with my kids. After that, she came outside, and she shut them all down badly in response to their regular appeal for the respective stuff that they wanted from the store. I was adamant about breaking her in between, but I wanted to follow for a while. I was moving out after I saw her pushing my kids inside the house as they were playing out and refused to go with her. I got to the house and embraced my kids in my arms. They soon turned towards me and were really happy to see me. After that, I confronted my mother-in-law over the way that she was behaving with my kids, and she was in shame, yet blamed me for saying that she could not bear my kids from the moment I left. They've been wanting me and making it difficult for me to perform her actions, and she withholds me from spoiling my kids and tells me that I've made them so. Well, I shut her down, told her that I was taking my kids away with me, and she tried stopping me, but I was determined to do so. She told me that she would tell me all about it to Dia, and I had no effect on her words. I kept on moving to my parents' house along with my kids. Update number 2. Hey guys, so 2 days have passed since I've brought the kids along with me to my parents' house after seeing the way my mother-in-law treated them. I could not control myself, and so I confronted her as to why she's been so indifferent to my kids. Even when she framed me in a deceiving act, getting me out of her daughter's house and claiming her control over my kids. She told me that my kids have been asking for my presence since I left the place, and that she found it hard to control them. So, she got frustrated and had to behave in such a way to move them out. I had no trust in her after what she did to me. She didn't really care about pulling out the deceiving act against me, and without thinking about the impact it would have had on my relationship with Dia and our kids, she was wrong in thinking that by doing this, she could actually turn my kids against me. In the evening, when I got back to my parents' house along with my kids, I got a call from Dia, and she wasn't interested in listening to me at all. Rather, she was furious over the fact that I brought both of the children along with me to my parents. I tried telling her the reason, but she did not want to listen. She was blaming me for taking them away from her, and I knew that she must have been misled by her mother, who, by the way, had told her all the wrong things about me. She told me that her mom told her that I took the kids away from her while also disrespecting her. I kept listening to her for a while, and she stuck somewhere in between. I asked her to listen to me just once, and then I told her all about it. At first, she was quite moved by my appeal, and she was keen on believing me, yet somehow she got perplexed after that and rejected me altogether. I knew that she still believed in me, yet she was not able to let go of her mom. It was at that moment that I told her that the thing I got to know from the neighboring people, which even surprised me at first, they revealed that my mother-in-law was behaving quite terribly with the kids. She would make them leave the house, and she would even beat them so cruelly in public. The worst thing about it was that she would be on her phone while they were all around. Dia would not believe me, but when I disclosed to her that it was our neighbor, she withstood all of it. Then she got quiet, after I gave them a reference. So, as she was well acquainted with them, she quickly called them to confirm it, and she called me again, and this time she sounded really worried about her mistake. I got to know from her voice that she knew the real truth about her mother. I talked to her for a while, and there she acknowledged me, saying that I was correct in bringing the kids to my parents' house, and she told me to deal with the situation after she returned from work. Update number 3. Hey guys. So, it seems to me that the wrongdoings of my mother are taking a toll on her. I could not figure out why she was pulling such a ruse. It would not be wrong to say that she has not left any chance of misleading my wife into believing that I'm no good for her kids or herself. To her disdain, her deceiving acts had no serious effects on Dia, as I told her all about them. At first, I found her quite indifferent to my appeals, yet she got to believe me when I mentioned our neighbors, who's been sitting on the absurd behavior of my mother-in-law towards my kids for days. Well, and how they told me all about it after I followed my kids to her house, after finding them outside the store with my mother-in-law. Luckily enough, my wife has a good relationship with our neighbors, and they seem to get along with her well. So, they confronted her about the misdoings of her mother and how she behaved so abrasively with our kids. It was then that she got the real thing, and she seemed to understand me so well. I knew that she always wanted to believe me, and that she was being misled by her mother, who had some real things going on with me. Now, she seemed to listen to me and heard everything that I wished to tell her from the beginning. I tried a lot to confront her about all of it. She was determined to punish her for the inglorious acts that were pressed on me by my mother-in-law. But now she knew what the real thing was, and she knew that there was something suspicious about her mom, as she kept on misleading her all the time. Dia really believed in her. However, she got to know about it after she got involved with our neighbors. It was quite evident to her that her mother was not really loyal to her all this time. She would have thought that I was not totally wrong the other day. There could have been some disparities between me and my mother-in-law, and she approved of me seeing her after returning from her trip. So, after some days, I got to receive Dia at my parents' house. She has just gotten back from her trip, and she has just come to our house first, which was made evident by the luggage that she was carrying along with her. We did share some glances before she moved towards our kids, and she had embraced them in her arms, and they were relieved to have her. Our kids have gone through a lot in the last few days, and they were delighted to have Dia in our home. My parents were also enjoying themselves really well with the kids, and they were behaving so nicely with Dia as well. which they've always done before, and after that we both shared some talk over the whole matter. There, I told her all about her mother's deceiving into believing that I was behaving badly with the kids, and how it was all made up by her, and she cuttingly placed a camera in my room that day. Wow, and made me shout too hard at them by making them come over to me while I was involved with some really annoying work. I did apologize to her for that mistake, though, and concluded it was really troubled by my behavior that day. And I told her that I would not behave that way towards my kids ever again. She was getting what I was telling her, and she seemed to believe it, and after I finished, she hugged me hard. She disclosed to me that she's been trying to believe me all this while, yet she has been misled by her mother. She asked for my forgiveness in the whole situation, and I quickly forgave her without thinking about it for a second. Now that all her mother's misdeeds were in front of her, it was difficult for her to bear the presence of her mother in our home. So she asked me to come to her house and settle there, as she was not able to withstand my absence all this time. And now that everything was clear between us, there was nothing that could set me apart from her. So I just joined the house along with my kids and got back to my usual routine. I've had some relief from the office work as I got promoted to a senior position. This allowed me to get in touch with my kids yet again, and they seemed pleased to return to the usual settings that were there between us. We decided to let go of my mother-in-law and planned her to return to the village which she came from. We agreed that it was quite great of her to leave us and return to her place. It was really difficult for us to have her after all of this. She was not getting any better about her feelings for me, and Dia tried a lot to explain to her the real thing, but she was determined to believe what she really believed, and it made it worse for her to be around me and our kids. Dia was apparently required to choose between the two of us, and so she agreed to love me and share our kids in-house with me. So let me ask you, what would you do? Alright, so this mother-in-law, she was pretty evil. It seemed like she was so vindictive, and she was toxic, and all she wanted to do was ruin OP's marriage with her daughter. I do want to hear from you guys. Say, for instance, you were in OP's position, and you were just trying to work. And here's your mother-in-law sending your kids in during important calls over and over to bug you on purpose, and this mother-in-law knew exactly what she was doing because she hid a camera in their room. I mean, how weird is that? Let me hear from you guys though. Say, for instance, you had this mother-in-law to deal with. How do you go about handling this? And also, what do you think of OP's wife not taking OP seriously for so long? Drop your comments down below. My name's Mr. Reddito. I narrate stories daily, similar topics, so if you enjoyed today's video, smash that subscribe button. I'll see you tomorrow, but remember, it's cool to be kind. See ya!